In step one, you went through a number of activities to set up the data that's appropriate for your region and also adjust the way the model behaves to reflect particular characteristics of the region you're working in. Now you're in a position to explore some of the behaviour and rules that might be tried in order to slow down or cut the outbreak, and you do that in these mauve areas below the main charts for the model. The first category concerns hygiene and social distancing measures, and all three of these work by changing factors over time. The first item allows you to sketch out how much impact could be made on the spread of the disease by hygiene measures that people take because they're recommended to by the authorities. This includes some very simple things like hand washing, elbow bumping instead of handshaking and so on, but it also includes masks and gloves to reduce the probability that you will pass the virus on to other people. And you quite simply click on the item itself and sketch a time path for how you think social behaviour on hygiene issues may have changed over time. Just be careful to get the timing of this about right relative to when you think people in your population actually started changing their behaviour, and if so, by how much. This is actually substantially important. If hygiene measures only manage to reduce the probability that you'll pass on the virus by 20%, that would reduce R0, for example, from 2.0 to 1.6. Now that makes a huge difference to the growth rate of the disease. So even changes to this parameter that might seem quite minor can nevertheless be well worth doing and have a substantial impact on the outbreak. The second and third items are to do with social distancing, and this is changes in people's behaviour to basically stay away from each other. The first of them is voluntary social distancing. That is people simply choosing to listen to the advice to stay at home, not go to work if they don't have to, stay at a distance from people. Just basically using their common sense to avoid unnecessary close contact. And this works in the same kind of way as the hygiene factor by reducing the normal rate of contact between people from its normal rate to some fraction of that normal rate. So what I'm showing here is that people reduce their social contact frequency to about 70% of normal. The third item is an enforced version of this. So this is when the government basically says you've got to stay home, you're not to go to work, you're not to travel, we're going to shut the restaurants. Lockdown is the term quite often used for this. It works in exactly the same way. It cuts by some fraction the frequency with which people contact each other. Now you can sketch in charts for both of these factors, and it will clearly make a substantial difference to the way in which the model behaves. And the way that they interact with each other is that the model picks whichever is the lower of those two items. So you can see in the chart below them there is the result for the actual contacts per day after allowing for either voluntary, that's the blue line, voluntary cuts to people's contact rates, or enforced cuts, that's the red line. So as I say, the model will take the lower of those two charts and run that through to affect the contact rates throughout the period of the model.